SharePoint list with multiple content type and you want dynamic form using PowerApps, then you are at the right place. Because in this video, I'm going to show you how you can create a dynamic PowerApps form for the SharePoint list that is using multiple content type. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome. I'm Deepak Shrivastava and welcome to my channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification icon. So, as we know, in SharePoint, we can create a list that can use multiple content type. And this works perfectly fine in SharePoint. But if you try to use that list that is using multiple content type as a data source in PowerApps, there are some challenges that we face. And the challenge is like, if someone tried to create a new item for that list, the Power App, as of now, doesn't tell you that what all columns belongs to which content type. So for the end user, it is always difficult to provide information because if they select one particular content type, they don't know what all column they need to provide information for. So let me show you the use case, what we're going to use today. Okay, so I have created this list called issue tracker in the SharePoint. Okay. This list is using three content type: enhancement, issues, and feedback. So as an end user, I can submit an issue, I can submit a request for enhancements, or I can also provide feedback. But all of this information is getting stored into this single list. And as you can see here, this list has three content type associated with it. Now I'm using this list as a data source for this Power App, as you can see here. So these are my issue. I can select feedback. I can see all the feedback. And if I click on enhancement, I can see all the enhancement requests. Now, if I click on new item, so I'm opening the new form where user can submit an issue. But now, as you can see here, it is only showing me the column those are required for an issue. If I change the content type to feedback, the form is automatically going to change. And now it's going to show me only the column required for feedback. If I go to the enhancement, as you can see, now I'm seeing only the columns required for the enhancement request. Okay, so start with, let's create a blank canvas app. Okay, so my app is created. So now what we're going to do, we're going to connect to the SharePoint as a data source. So I connected to the data source and I'm going to pick my issue tracker list. Click connect. Okay, so my data source is connected. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my app, the screen one, that is the home screen, and I'm going to add a gallery that will just display all the items that I have. So my gallery is showing all the items from that issue tracker list. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add an icon here, just the add icon. And then I'm going to add another screen that will be a screen for my form. And on this screen, what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop a form, a Power App form, right? So this is my form. Connect to data. I'm going to pick the data source as issue tracker. Okay. So as you can see here, it is showing some of the column, not all the column, but some of the column from that list. Let me go back to the home screen. On click of this plus icon, what I'm going to do, I'm going to reset the form that we have just added to the second screen. And we're going to create a new item. So reset form, the name of the form is form 1. And the new form, again, name of the form 1. Okay. And then after that, we will navigate to the form screen. So let me play it. Click. And as you can see here, this is my new form. It is showing some of the column. Now let's see what happens if we don't make any changes. So number one thing, if you go to the form and if you go to the fields, edit fields, click on add fields. Now as you can see here, you are seeing all those different fields irrespective of the content type. And I will show you in a while. So let me add all these different fields on the form first. So as you can see here, what I'm seeing title assigned to all these different fields. If I go back to my SharePoint list, and if I go to the list settings, you can see all those different columns here, but not all these columns belongs to all the content type. Like for example, issue have some of these column association. Enhancement has 2 or 3 of them. Similarly, feedback, right? But in Power App, you don't know. For example, if I play this one, if I click on the content type, I am getting all those different content type, but if I select them, nothing gonna happen. And that's what we want to change. We want to make sure if user selecting an issue, only the issue related column should be displaying here. Okay, so let me make a little bit change on the UI. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to edit the fields. We're going to move content type on the top, right? So we can select and I'm going to make this form as one column, right? So now we have a form that is one column. We have the first column is the content type. We don't know in Power App which column belongs to which content type. So I have 2 options or 2 solutions for you guys. The first one is very simple. The second one is also very simple, but not as simple as the first one. Okay, so the first option. So what I did in my SharePoint, I created a list called CT master, or you can call it content type master. And this list has 2 columns, the title and the columns. Title is the name of the content type, and the columns is the number of columns this content type belongs to. Yes, this is the manual list. So for an example, if I'm adding a content type to my list, I can come here, add that content type name and all the columns that content type belongs to. So for an example, the issue content type has these many columns. Feedback has these many columns. Enhancement has these many columns, right? So this is my master list for the content type. And if I go back to my app, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect. So this time what we're going to select the CT master. Okay, so now we have our content type master data source connected, right? Now the only thing we need to do, we need to write some logic so we can show hide these fields. And now we are going to use a formula that will tell us whether the given column belongs to this selected content type or not, based on the information that we are getting from that CT master list. Okay, so the formula is very straightforward. What we are trying to do in this formula, I'll go from the center. So first thing that we are saying, look up CT master list where title equal to data card 13.selected.name, and data card 13 is the content type data card. So if this is selected issue, then we are filtering the CT master for the issue. If this is enhancement, we are filtering for enhancement. If I go back to the actual SharePoint list, as you can see here, if this is issue, it's going to give me this one row, issues and all these columns. If the selected is feedback, then it will give me these 3 columns. Okay, so we are getting this dot columns. This part will give me all the columns. If self.displayName for the card will give me the name of the column that this card belongs to. So in this case, it's saying issue status, right? So this condition is saying if the name of the column, that is issue status, in this query. So that query is going to give me this information. And as you can see here, it is there. So you can see the issue status belongs here, right? So the condition is true. So that's the only formula. So now, because that formula is very dynamic, the only thing you need to do, you need to select each and every card and apply the same formula there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all of them but content type, because we don't want content type to be hidden. Go to the visual property and paste that formula. And that's all what I need to do. Now, if I play the form, now you can see the issue is showing me only the column those are related to the issue. If I change to feedback, here you go. Now you are seeing only those 3 columns, those belongs to feedback. If I go to enhancement, as you can see here. Okay, option number 2. Now, as I said, option number 2 is simple, but not as simple as this one. So if we want to automate this process of getting all the columns belongs to a given content type, we need to create a flow. Okay, and what that flow will do, that flow will use, of course, SharePoint REST API and query all the columns and the content type and send that information back to our Power App. And then we can use our logic to show and hide these fields. Okay. So to call the flow, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click a button or add a button here. And in the action, I'm going to use the Power Automate. Click there. I have already created that flow, so I'm going to walk you through. So let me log into the flow and I'll show you. Okay, so this is the flow that going to help us finding all the content type, all the columns for that list. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the flow that is getting called from PowerApps. First thing that we need to make it fully dynamic is the name of the list. So what I'm doing here, I have created one compose action here calling list name. And then I'm trying to ask PowerApp for that information. And how you can do it, I'm going to show you. So if I click on add an action and if I go compose, in here, you just need to say ask in PowerApps. And as soon as you click that, it will create something like this. So remember, whatever name you gave to your compose action will become the name of the variable that you will see in PowerApp. So before clicking on PowerApps, change the name. Maybe you can just type here something like, okay, change the name and then click on ask in PowerApps. Okay, so it will be something like this. Then I have created two variables, column set and columns. Both are strings. Column set is actually the final output that we are going to send back to the PowerApps. The second variable is columns. This is just to store columns for a given content type. Okay, just two variables. Then we have two very important SharePoint actions here. Both are using send HTTP request to SharePoint action. And the HTTP request that we are calling is the list get by title. And as you can see here saying output, this is the output of our list name variable, as you can read here. The second, again, same send HTTP request to SharePoint. But in this case, we are using the different API. What we are using list get by title, but content types. So as you can see at the end, it's saying content types. So this API or this URL will give me all the content type associated with this list. Okay, very simple. And before I explain the later part of this flow, let me show you the previously run flow, because I need to show you the output of one of the actions so you can understand. So get list ID or getting the list information, this API will give me all the information like this. And if you scroll down, it has column called ID, and that's what we need. And we're going to use this one, right? So this is the response for our first action. The second action, this is getting all the content type, is looks like this. So D results, and then it has all these different content type information, as you can see here, correct? So I just wanted to show you that the information that is coming from these two actions is something like the d.results, and then we have all these different content type. Now I go back and edit this, and I'll show you the next action. So the next action that we're going to use an apply to each, and we are going loop through each content type that we are getting in this previous action, as you can see here, body.d.results. Very simple. This is our action results, body of get list CT, and then the next part is D and results, as I showed you previously. That's how we are getting the response. Okay. The next one, REST call that we have to make, because we got the content type. Now we need to make another REST API call to get all the columns. Those are belongs to this content type. And this is where we're going to pass the list ID. This is the list ID that we are getting from our first action. And I'm going to show you how this looks like. So output of our get list ID, that is our this action, again body, D, and then ID column. So this is the expression to get the ID. Okay. And then the second, very simple, we're gonna get the ID of the content type for which we are running this loop for. And the expression for this one is gonna look like this. Current item, string ID. And this is the column name. This is the column name that is giving me the ID. Okay, and this is very standard, so you can use it as it is without making any changes. And once you make this get columns API call, it will give you all the columns belongs to the given content type. Okay, now before we move forward, we are setting up the columns variable that we have declared on the top to null. So we are reinitiating it. And then what we are doing, as you can see here, going through each column. Now this looks very similar. The only thing has changed. Now we are looping through each column that we are receiving in this action get column. So if I show you this expression, again, it's saying body of get columns. That is our action. Body D results is going to give us all the columns. Okay. And then for each column, what we are doing in this column variable, we are appending the title. And the title is going to be the name of the column that we're going to receive from that API. Okay, so that's all we're going to do to get all the columns for that given content type. And once this column loop complete for a given content type, we are going to append to our column set variable. So for column set variable, we are appending this information, and this I need to show you. So this is what we are doing. We are doing concat. This is the name of the content type in the current loop, colon, and all the name of these columns. Okay, so this is the expression that we are setting up. And then this is gonna complete each content type loop. After that, we are just converting the column set to the string and sending that string back to the PowerApps. So now we understand the flow. Let me go back to the PowerApp. This was the flow that I was talking. I'm going to add this to my PowerApp. And now if you remember, it is asking me the list name input. That was the variable that we have defined to get the list name. In PowerApp, there is something called data source info, right? I'm going to select the issue tracker and data source display name. Okay, so this data source info, name of the data source, and display name is going to give me the name of the data source. And that's actually my list name. Now, if you remember, our flow is returning as in string. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set a variable and I'm going to store the response that my flow is providing into this variable list CT. Okay. Now I can copy this entire expression or formula and I'll go to my app on start. I'll paste it there. So on app on start, I'm going to call this flow and get all this information. So if I go to my form screen, let me just show you what I'm getting. I'm going to insert a label here just to see the response that I'm getting from my flow. And I'm going to say you can see, right? So I'm getting all the content type and the columns from my flow, but still it's not in that perfect format that we need. So on app on start, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a function called split, and we will split this response that we are getting from the Power Automate dot. We need to just use the column. Now this will give us a collection. Okay, and let me show that. So let me remove this label from here and insert a gallery just to show you how we are getting the response. Okay, so you can see this, right? So this is the name of the content type and these are the columns. Feedback and enhancement. The next what we need to do, we need to just update our formula. Okay, so this is the updated formula and I'm going to just show you side by side. So self.displayName, that has not changed. The only thing that has changed is this lookup function, right? So previously, if you look at our previous formula, we were looking at that master list that we have created. But now what we are doing, we are going into that collection that we are getting from the flow. And this doesn't change. We are still trying to find the selected content type from the form. But what we are doing, we are trying to find that in the result. And result is nothing but this table. Like if you see this response that we are getting, the column in which we are getting the information is result. So we are saying look up in this list where the selected name, the content type name in result. And why we are doing so, because if you look this one, this is how we are sending from the Power Automate. We are not really sending in two separate columns. We're just sending in one column as a string. So it's going to look for this issue in these different string, and wherever it find, it will give you that that item. So this will give us the first item because this is where it find the issue, and then we're going to try to find if the column name, for example, this time we are trying to do assign to exist in that result. So if I select this one, as you can see here, this is giving me all this information. Now again, this is also a dynamic expression. So what we are going to do, we're going to again do the same thing, select all these card and then just set the visual property. Now if I run the app again, and if I click on the plus icon, and if I select, let's say, feedback, enhancement, or issue. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. Go ahead and give a try if you have any such requirement. Thank you very much. Thanks for giving your time. And also, last but not the least, subscribe and keep watching. Thank you.